Welcome, everybody. And once again, thank you for joining us on the Resilient Lawyer podcast. I'm Mareike and I am with my co-host, Sonia Celia, and our guest, Alicia van Walt. She is a seasoned partner at Adams. Welcome, everybody. And once Hold on a second. I'm just having an echo on YouTube. Apologies for that. So just quickly to introduce Alicia, she's a seasoned partner at Adams & Adams and a qualified trademark practitioner, specializing in trademark registration and portfolio management across South Africa, Africa, and internationally, with extensive expertise, academic credentials, and contributions to the legal and academic communities. Welcome, Alicia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mareike. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. So, Alicia, before we get into today's topic, firstly, tell us more about you and how did you get specifically in this trade in the legal industry?
Thanks, Mareike. So basically, I studied law at the University of Johannesburg. Back then it was Rand Afrikaanse Universiteit. And, I always knew that I wanted to specialize in something. But then, unfortunately, I ended up working in a general law firm where I did a lot of things. I did divorces, debt collection, criminal matters, everything. And I just realized, this is really not something that I want to do for the rest of my life. And then I did a lot of research, just reading about the different trends, what's happening out there. And back then, IP was something that really stood out. And that was specifically nanotechnology that became a thing. And I started reading a lot about nanotechnology, and then I just stumbled upon the IP field. And then I just kind of, I really tried to apply to all the law firms who specialize in IP, because it's not all the law firms that offer the IP service offering. And then I just basically really applied to all the law firms. I got an interview, and so basically it was just because I didn't want to work with people. I wanted to work with companies. And that's how I stumbled into it. And I'm just very grateful for it because it's a great area of law.
Yes. Thank you for that, Alicia. Now let's talk about AI, the dilemma, that AI actually plays into this IP field, and what it means for the future of IP law. What is the trends there, or what are you picking up currently?
So yes, AI, obviously all the law firms are also looking at AI to streamline processes and things that we do. So for example, when you do a lot of trademark searches like I do, you have to go through pages and pages and pages of results, and it could take hours. So if you can get an AI tool that can really summarize it and look at the marks from a visual, phonetic and conceptual similarity perspective, then that would make our work a lot easier. And, we would be, the price could come down, because you won't spend as much time on it. So there are definitely benefits for AI in a practice as well, especially in an IP practice. But what we've noticed in the real world is everyone's generating content from ChatGPT and making logos and stuff from, using these AI tools. And the problem with that is, there was usually a very clear cut thing that the person who creates the work is the owner of the work. So nowadays, when you have a search, like a tool, AI tool who creates the work, we're not really sure who the owner of the work is. So that's where we're sitting at the moment. In South Africa, you really require a human to be an owner of the work. So a machine can't be the owner of the work. Also, in South Africa, there has been a matter where an algorithm has been listed as a patent inventor. But I mean, in the UK and the USA, that's not the case. So we do require some legislation. But the big thing is, we don't know who the owner of the IP is. So that's something we'll need regulations and stuff. And hopefully that will come. But Europe is usually the one that sets the trend. So we'll see what happens there.
So interesting. I can imagine it becomes a dilemma, because because you have the idea, but you might use, some AI tools to help, facilitate the process. And I think that's where the lines, become a bit blurry.
Yes.
How do you manage?
Obviously, there's also a risk of infringement. A lot of these open source AI tools uses information that is out there to generate the answers. And he might be copying from a book or a lyric or a logo of another company, and then you won't immediately realize that because the AI generated it, but then you could be, infringing someone's rights, and then you could be potentially be sued for trademark or copyright infringement. So those are also things to think about. And obviously, if you're writing a song or a book or a script or something like that, and you use ChatGPT or one of the other open source AI tools for that, there's definitely a risk that you might be infringing, because with copyright infringement, for example, you don't have to copy a substantial portion, but if you copy something that is the crux of the book or the lyric, then that could still be considered to be copyright infringement.
Sure. And people don't know that.
No. Everyone's just using ChatGPT to write an email and a book and a script and obviously the universities have a lot of concerns in this regard. So they are putting in policies, how to use AI. And even with law firms, we've got a lot of policies. You can't just put a contract into some open source ChatGPT type of thing, because the client's information and data and stuff is in there. So there's always those risks as well that needs to be taken into consideration.
But I think it is the future. So is there anything in South Africa yet that is now heading towards that we will have regulations for this? Because it's going to be like any other tool. So I was thinking now, if I go to a graphic designer and I ask for a logo, she also uses software and she uses designs that she maybe used previously, and she still puts it together. Now you're doing it on your own with an AI assistant, and you say, okay, move it to the left, change the color. So there's some human involvement, but as you say, he could be taking that from, we don't know which source. So is there anything in the pipeline at this stage, to regulate it?
So no, there's unfortunately nothing in the pipeline at the moment. We've got the new Copyright Act that's coming in. That should be, that's basically in the pipeline, but there's a lot of controversy surrounding the new Copyright Act. But that's something that we are looking at, and our firm is actually heavily involved with the drafting of the legislation. So it has been sent back, we're very involved with that. But like you have an act specifically dealing with domain names and electronic commerce and stuff like that. We don't have an act specifically regulating AI at the moment. So I think the Copyright Act might touch on it a little bit, but there's definitely things that we need to get in place. And I think all the companies, every single company in South Africa needs an AI policy where you tell your employees you can't use AI to generate any of your work. As a graphic designer, and the difference between using AI to generate a logo for you or employing a graphic designer is that you have a contract in place with the graphic designer. And usually we would say, the graphic designer will have to say she used her own efforts and skill to come up with the logo. Although tools are used, at the end of the day, it has to be something that's original and not copied. And that's usually an agreement, and then the ownership of the logo would go over to the person who commissioned it, because it's not automatic, just by the way. If you commission someone to design a logo for you, the designer is actually the owner of the logo, unless they assign the rights in that logo to you. And with the machine, that's not necessarily the case. They won't give you undertakings that they're not copying, not using, that it's completely novel and invented or unique. So you don't get that from a machine. But I just think every single company should have a form of an AI policy, just outlining how you can use AI, when you can use AI, and maybe just to use it as a tool, but you can't copy it. It can lead you, but it can't really be copied from that. Something like that.
And the rest of the world, has anyone actually really written proper?
So the European Union, they have, and it's funny. A couple of years ago, there was an exchange student who came to Adams and Adams for a program, because they do that a lot. They send them. So if you're a candidate attorney in their terms in Germany, you come to South Africa and then you just learn about how it works here. And we have someone there, and all the attorneys in Germany, they're like doctors. They get their doctor's degree, their PhD. So it's very rarely that you get a German attorney who doesn't have a PhD. That's frowned upon, because their education is everything. And he came to South Africa, and I went for a walk with him in it was like a little trial because we were showing him the animals and stuff. And my husband and I went for a walk with him. And my husband specializes in AI. And then we started talking about it. And we said to him, why don't you do your PhD AI with IP? You merge the two. And he actually did that. So just a South African gave him that idea. But he's heavily involved in drafting the regulations for the EU at the moment on, how to regulate the AI. And they have a lot of seminars and stuff. But, it's still up in the air. It's being processed and stuff. But I definitely think the EU will be the one to set the trend. And then we'll just, usually we just build on that. So I'm hopeful that that will be the case.
I was thinking now, I've heard of a couple of people now that's built their own AI. So it's not necessarily the open AI you would have in ChatGPT. So a company would build their own AI, like you say, maybe for going through the amount of reading you need to do. I suppose that will then be treated differently again. So if you build your own AI with your own system, you must also then register that as intellectual property, I suppose. But would that be your work then, or would it be the AI's work?
Well, usually how it would work is, so you would get an AI expert to sit in your company. Say, for instance, you have thousands and thousands of documents that you need to work through. And then obviously as an employer, the software engineer would write the program, and then they would write a program, an AI program, to read through the material, to summarize the material, whatever they want. So in that case, the employer will be the owner of the IP in the AI system. But then, so that's like a closed loop system, it will be within the company. And usually it will only be to generate content, to use the content, stuff like that. So there's not really, I won't be that concerned when you do it like that, because the employer will always be the owner. And then the AI is not really going to generate something unless you ask them to, but then at least it's based on the information that you have within your company. So you're not copying from someone else using other people's information. It's all very controlled. So I won't be too concerned about that, and it will all stay within the company. So in that case, I think it should be fine. And that's definitely happening a lot. But then also there will be a policy, probably how to use the system. I mean, if you look at Microsoft, which is great about what they've got, the Microsoft Copilot, which is their AI tool, and they keep it safe. So it's very safe for a company to use the Microsoft Copilot software, because it's like your Outlook. It's exactly the same. Your information is not going anywhere. It stays within that closed circuit. So there I feel very comfortable to say to a company, you can use Copilot, because they're not copying from anywhere. They're not putting your clients or your information out there. So those type of systems, I feel that's quite safe.
But because I've obviously, and the Copilot's been coming up on my Microsoft all the time as well. And I thought, do you know, do they actually have access to the information I now place in a Word document? Because you've got the Copilot coming up all the time.
No, they definitely do. I mean, with Word, Microsoft, they have access to everything and they can learn from it. But obviously you have the free Copilot. That's not that great. But if you start paying for it, which is part of your Microsoft license, the results you get, it's quite good. And then it actually learns how you draft an email. So based on previous experiences, you can just ask it to draft a response, and then you can read through it and just send it off. That's also possible. And the more you use it, the more it learns how your style. So it's very helpful.
Interesting. And then in your previous article, you mentioned something, with regards to brain rot. So it almost feels like, now Copilot can also write my emails for me. The term there, how do you experience that? Where do you see that coming in?
Yes, so that was actually Oxford University Press chose brain rot as the word of the year for 2024. And they defined it as the supposed deterioration of a person's mental or intellectual state, especially when viewed as a result of overconsumption of material, or what we would call online content, which is considered to be trivial or unchallenging. And I think it's just, we as consumers have been so overwhelmed with content, and it's very repetitive, and you really don't have to think about it. And it's causing a lot of people not to think about anything anymore. We just copy what we see. We can't be original. And I mean, that's impacting if you think intellectual property in a way, because people can't focus for long, people can't be creative. It's like if you want to write something, you ask ChatGPT to write it. If you want to generate an image, you ask some form of AI to generate it. So people are not really applying their minds. And I think people are getting, we're becoming dumber in a way, because our brains are rotting and we're not really using our mental capacity that we have, because it's just so easy to sit and scroll for hours and just not to focus on anything. And also the problem that all of us have, people can't read anymore. So we have to make videos, people, even short articles aren't good enough. You need a video and it has to be short. So, we're all falling into that trap, and it's definitely a trend that everyone's seeing. And I think, they've said that they expect that, although people still rely heavily on AI and stuff, there will be a time when people will actually start going back to just being original and putting stuff out there that are just human generated.
Yes, I think your eye can almost catch it when AI is being used, because you almost get familiar with the way that, AI would speak. Although AI can be very clever, I think the need for authenticism will definitely become much more important.
Yeah.
For yourself, how do you navigate, your career and everything that you do for yourself, to stay resilient, in these type of times, so that not falling into that trap as well as we all maybe do? How do you, manage things in your life?
Well, to be honest, I must say I'm just also trying to figure it out. But one thing that's really worked for me is I read an article the other day where they said if you want to get off of social media, which I think is affecting all of us, and it eats up your time. And as a lawyer, you need your time, you need your rest, you need to focus. And I think, like we mentioned, people can't sit and focus anymore. So what I've done is, like, over weekends, I would deliberately take an hour and just stare at a wall. And or at a tree, or just something, even my kids, just stare at them for an hour, because it kind of forces you just to be in the moment. I think it's very important. And once I started doing that, I actually realized that we spend so much time on stuff that's just irrelevant and scrolling, and it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't bring anything to you. So I'm really trying to be mindful. And I think the one thing that really helps me, to be focused and to be able to give that advice that you give, to really focus on what you're doing, is exercise. I really think that's the most important. Even if it's just 15 minutes a day, where I would just do squats, or, walk around the block or something, just something like that really helps me a lot. And I think just to stay relevant and resilient, you must read. You must stay up to track with, just listen to podcasts if you don't want to read, do stuff like that just to keep up with what's happening out there. And that's really helpful. And obviously, I read a lot of articles. I subscribe to IP newsletters and stuff, which has helped me a lot. And especially because IP is so global, it's really nice just to, see what the trends are, and then we apply it in our practice as well. So that's been very helpful. But I think if there are any up and coming lawyers out there, I mean, we all work long hours. It's something you can't. It's just one of those things, and they make serious about it because everyone works these long hours. But I think if you need to do that, just try and avoid the stuff that's keeping you back. If alcohol is making you tired and not sleeping properly, just leave it. If you feel like going for a walk or a jog, or just doing some exercise helps you, do it. If eating processed or unhealthy food is not getting you to where you want to be, just leave it. It's so easy. It's small things that just makes you feel great about yourself, and then you're able to perform, and then you feel better about yourself, and you're able to continue with that trend. It's just little things that you can do. And also, don't compare yourself to anyone else. Just be the best version of yourself. And when I'm faced with the decision of, especially when I was younger, where do I want to be? Where do I want to work? I would just always say, choose the best people to work with. Because if you surround yourself with good people, then you will just become the best version of yourself. I think that's almost the most important thing. Money, power, status, it's not great if you're surrounded by people that's not bringing the best out of you. If you can work with the best people that are good, thorough, nice people, you will really get very far.
No, that's very valuable. I mean, like they say, you become like the 5 people that you spend most time with. And that's also imprinted in our biology. We have something called mirror neurons. So those mirror neurons pick up behaviors and things of the people that we surround ourselves with, and then we become that. So it's very important. I think you actually gave a lot of tips in a very short time, but I think what is essence is to be more intentional, even though there's long hours, to be more intentional, to make sure that you look after yourself, not spend time on things that maybe waste your time. You've also mentioned, just being present, being intentional to just stare at something or nature for an hour, just to become, more present. I think it's small things, like you say, it's not big things, it's small little habits, that makes a huge difference in how we feel day to day and our health and everything.
Exactly.
And Marika, if you can maybe elaborate for us, because you've touched on something that's so important, and it's exercise. And there's a direct link between your neurons and exercise, but Marika can explain it quite a lot better than I can. If you can maybe just elaborate on that.
Okay, so one of the things is BDNF. It's I can't remember the long name now, but if you go and look it up, it's the food that our neurons need to grow and to develop. Because as we know, neuroplasticity, it's our ability of our brain to always make new connections, reorganize themselves, and so forth. And when we are young, we produce a lot of BDNF, which is the food that our brain needs to develop and grow. But as we get older and as we learn less and less, the brain also starts, producing less BDNF, which means that the brain cells that gets that hormone lives on, and the others that don't, our brain cells starts to die. So we start losing brain mass as well with age. So exercise is one of the practices that stimulates the production of BDNF, is what our brains need to stay healthy, to make new neural connections. So on the one end, yes, it's for health-related reasons, but exercising is critical for our brain's health, to be able to focus, to get rid of toxins, and to learn and to learn new things as we grow older. Just in a nutshell. So for those
That's
who didn't
great. And it's very important. I can't agree. I think as we get older, that's one thing I realized as well, everything I do now is to preserve my brain, my body, because I mean that's all, you don't want to be old and struggle. And if you can do it now, that, and like you say, eat the right stuff, and exercise. I've been reading so much about it. It's the most important thing for everything. Even if you don't sleep well, just exercise and you will feel great.
Yeah, and like you said, it doesn't have to be going to the gym, because oftentimes we fool ourselves, to say, but I don't have time to go to the gym. But like you said, it can be just walking around the block, or just doing a few squats, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, of a bit of exercise is better than nothing. So it could be something small, and it's enough.
Yeah, especially in the legal profession, because we are so busy, it's one of the first things to sort of, you put on the back burner because you believe you don't have time. And I think what Marika said is so true. Even if it's 10, 15 minutes of movement, it already makes a huge difference. But it doesn't have to be a specific slot or an hour a day, which we often feel we don't have. It could be any small movement during the day, and it will assist.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Alicia. Sorry, it was so nice speaking to you. It's nice to hear a different perspective, from the legal industry, but from your aspect, it's a bit different, but we learn a lot, because everybody from the public at some point, I think, might, get to do with IP, whether you're starting your own business, you're an entrepreneur, you just quickly make a logo, things like that. So it applies to most people that I know, in any case. So just to be cautious on the AI part of it, I think it's very important that people educate themselves, in terms of, not, maybe people don't know if whatever information they put into ChatGPT is now general public access. I don't think a lot of people know that. So these conversations are very important.
Thank you very much for having me, Marika and Sonia. It was very nice to speak with you guys.
Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. And also thank you for everybody that is listening today and is watching on YouTube. We look forward again to